Hello everyone, welcome to the 63rd community demo. For better experience of the video, please increase the quality of your video, and to ask any questions, put them in the YouTube chat box or you can ask us on IRC. Few updates from my side. Uh, First update would be that it's only we are only 2 weeks away from the Foreman birthday, and I'm very grateful to the community for organizing a birthday event for us. So if you're nearby in Nuremberg, please drop by and say a hi. And second update would be that there will be a do you know tweet series for Foreman, which I will be tweeting from next week. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the the Foreman Twitter, it's probably time to do that. Read more about all these topics in the upcoming June newsletter. And enough of me talking. So let's see what we have in agenda today. So we have today we have Foreman containers fun by Ohad. Then we have navigation redesign by Ron, and then changes to content host registration by Jonathan. And in the end, we have task notification and troubleshooting links from Ivan. So over to you, Ohad. Let's over to you, Ohad. Yeah.
Hey, hello. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'll just wait for confirmation. Okay. All right, so thanks for joining. As I said earlier, this is take two of this demo, but I'm still excited to be in this demo. It's been a while since I demoed here, so thank you for having me. Today, I want to talk with you about the ability to run Foreman inside a container, or basically sets of containers. Let's go and talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. So back in 2013, there was the first request, and it was the mailing list before we even had this course, request the ability to run Foreman inside a container. And over the years, a lot of people end up running Foreman inside of containers for their production environments. Over the years as well, a few of those were maintained, a few were abandoned. And I gave you a couple of links. But for example, the Docker image you can find on the Docker Hub is 4 years old. Just to give credit where credit is due, Eric Helms did a lot of work, I think since 2017, in promoting the entire ecosystem. And you could check out some of the RFCs, how to promote the entire ecosystem so we can run Foreman on containers. And Cotello, and all associated plugins and backend services like Handle, Pintle, Pulp, based on the RPM and packaging work. And while this still in flight, we've added to Foreman Core, we called it the non-production support, which basically means the ability to take the core source code and immediately convert it into an image. So today we have the ability to create production images. And by production, I mean not necessarily we expect users to go and start using them in production. You're welcome to, but it's not supported. But actually that the content is in a production grade environment, meaning that all of the optimizations are in place, like JavaScript optimizations, and the translations are extracted and put in correctly. And so on. So technically, the image itself has all the tweaks needed to run it in production. We not only created the image one time, but we enabled the infrastructure to build images continuously on Quay. And I'll just click here to the repository of Foreman, where you could see in a second how automatically it builds images. You can see here basically every commit today. We can see a few commits that got merged into Foreman Core, and you can see how a link here to the various PRs, and you can see here that the images are automatically built. Each image takes about, it doesn't show here, but under 10 minutes for Quay to build it. So from the time it's merged into core to the time an image is publicly available, it's less than 10 minutes in general, and it uses the Quay infrastructure to actually continuously build it. Um, and of course, it won't work if it's just core. So while we have automated pipeline, not pipeline, but automated build for containers for core, everyone can actually customize their images. And it's fairly trivial to build your own sets of plugin combinations, or maybe you have some code like a pull request or even before pull request that you can create a container for. And in here, in this link, you have examples of how to build your own images, whether you build it locally or use a service such as Quay to do it yourself, to do it for you, sorry. All right, so what can you use it for today? So the first thing I think, and that's maybe in my opinion, one of the most important parts of this is the ability to get an environment running really, really quickly, regardless of what your ultimate goal could be. New users just trying it out. Could be maybe someone wants to see what's new in a given in a latest version, or perhaps I don't know. As a translators, you want to see the current state of translating before you actually start translating, or want to contribute in translating of the latest versions. Um, so for that, we've created an out-of-the-box Docker Compose environment, which I won't call it feature complete because it doesn't enable like end-to-end provisioning with everything, with all of the various combinations of things we can do with Foreman. But it does allow you to get the UI up and running quickly, and the ability to exercise, API calls, or use it in certain ways, to learn more about Foreman. Um, Other things that I've heard people using it is, for example, in end-to-end testing. I know there's Sean has the Ansible modules where he automates against a container image for API calls, and just use that to see the no regression with his code base. And I myself use it in a Kubernetes environment. I've put here a link to all of the Kubernetes definitions that needs to support it, if you guys want to try it out. All right, so enough talking. Let me try sharing my screen. Hopefully it will work. Please let me know if you can see my terminal. Okay. It's pretty silent. I'll take it as a yes. And I'm not seeing anything on IRC. All right, so let me know if it doesn't work on IRC when you guys see it on YouTube.
Yeah, they can see it. I can see that.
All right, success. Okay, so let's start with the Docker Compose part, because this is how most people will use it. The first thing you might want to do is to do a Docker Compose. So inside Foreman, there's two files that are relevant: Docker file and Docker Compose YAML. These two files are basically, the Docker file defines how to build the image, and the Docker Compose is what actually triggers and execute the image. Or we actually have multiple sets of images, which I'll show in a minute. So, but in order to use it, one would normally start with Docker Compose pull, which means I'll fetch the latest images. Assuming you want nightly, you probably want to fetch the latest image. By the way, that is very simple to configure which email you're using. You could see here, this is the image we're using today. So basically the latest. If you build your own, you just change it to your own image tag. So Docker Compose, and we do Docker Compose up. What it does, you can see here, it starts minimally 4 processes. I'll scroll up. I hope I can show it again. Yeah, 4 processes. One is Redis, one is a database, one is a worker, and one is an app. By default, we run it on MySQL today, but we could easily change it to Postgres. And technically, I now have nightly running in production on my environment. Now I just realized I have to stop sharing and share again so I can show my browser. So I'll do that very quickly. And what we have now is by default Foreman listening on port 3000, but running in production through the container. The default password is change me, I believe, and we have a Foreman environment fully running uh, in this case. Obviously, I don't have much data here, so it's not interesting. But it could be, you could easily use this to um, either connect to an existing database, copy your database and into the container environment fairly easily. Um, all right, and I'll go back to the terminal. So quickly discuss the Docker Compose file because I think it is interesting. By the way, when I control break here, if I do an up, it will automatically stop it, and now I have no longer any reference to the Docker containers. If I look at, there are no running Dockers, and if I look at the images, you could probably see this is the latest image. There are multiple here because I pulled a few, but if I'll, sorry, I'm cleaning up, I have a Docker cleanup script. But if I will look again at the images, these are the images that got used. The Foreman image itself, the Redis image, the database image, and the Redis and Foreman, Foreman itself images used twice, one time to run the Docker container, the Rails app, and one time to run Timeflow. So if we want to look very quickly, we can see here various sections for each part. So these are the database parts. Here we have the app part. And you could see, by the way, how nicely the new feature of environment variable contributed by Timo now allows us to add additional settings. I'm not sure if you saw that or whether it was demoed already. But now every setting that we used to have in the config setting YAML file can now be exposed as an environment variables. And we can see here, basically, this is the worker and Redis and so on. The nice thing, by the way, about this is that Docker Compose automatically will, in this case, will create our database will be persistent. So if we stop and start this next time, we will have the same database. It doesn't actually flush it out. So that's kind of useful. And again, if you have a different image, if you have a pull request based image or something, you just need to change this one line and you'll get the new image. You can try it out, play it out, and it's fairly easy to see it in production. All right. The second thing I wanted to show you, maybe that's a little bit more advanced and maybe new for some of you, is the Kubernetes-based environment. Very similar to what we just saw, but if I look at my Kubernetes environment, K is a alias in my environment, the kubectl, and this time I'm running Postgres as an image, and I have multiple Rails processes running behind the load balancer, and Redis and Worker, and I also have another task here which handles the database migration. So when I have a new version of a database migration, it will automatically push it for me. Obviously, there's not much difference. I have a different URL in this case, which is what Kubernetes exposed. And no surprise, it still works.
I guess we don't see the terminal there showing.
Yes. All right, I apologize. Thank you for the reminder. I just wanted to say that it doesn't really, there's no real difference because it's yet another Foreman running, this time behind Kubernetes. And then maybe a little bit what I'll do, I'll open in a new window the Kubernetes dashboard. And so hopefully it will open in a new tab. Yeah, okay. This is like the upstream Kubernetes dashboard. If you would deploy it in Kubernetes, it will create a namespace for Foreman, and here you could see really the Redis, Worker, Rails, Postgres, and pods are basically the containers, how much memory they take, and so on. Um, Not so much, very straightforward Kubernetes setup, handling the secrets, database passwords, and all of that automatically, tokens, and so on. If you are interested in more details, you can reach me out, find me, or go for any the Foreman Cube or any of the containers documentation. All right, thank you. More than happy to take questions if they come now or later, and thank you for the time.
Great, Ohad. It's really good to have you at the Foreman community demo again. Another thing, this was really fun, the container fun. And we don't have questions. I cannot see any questions right now because we kind of have a lag. So next, I would be moving on to Ron for navigation redesign. Over to you, Ron.
Hi everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Let's wait for the IRC guys. Okay. So we all remember the old the Foreman org site with the simple navigation. The most confusing page was the documentation page, where many links led to the same pages, and it's pretty hard to navigate. So in May last month, Brno meetup, we sat on a group of 4, led by Elzap, with Teresa, Sebastian, and myself. And we start to play with the cards of the navigation, trying to figure out what would be the best, what would be the best organized. And we also get feedback from the other guys in the meetup. So as you can see, the nodes became drop-downs. And as for the version selector in the documentation page, we added it to the Foreman manual and to the Foreman quick start. Now, I wanted to say that this site is really the face of our project. So we should really invest much more. This was a really small feature, but you are very welcome to contribute. Thanks.
That was great, Ron. I'm pretty sure a lot of us are very interested in doing the navigation redesigning. So if anybody is interested, please reach out to Ron and ask him questions. Next, let's move on to changes to content host registration by Jonathan. So over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Rahul. My screen should be sharing now. I've got a terminal up. Let me know if that's not the case. So, sounds like everything is good there. And, well, it's been a few weeks now since Gatello 3.12 has been released. And in that release, we made some changes to the behavior of content host registration. And I wanted to go over what those changes are and why we made those changes. So a quick summary of the change is that there was that behavior that you may or may not have been relying on when registering hosts. And that behavior is when we have an existing host in Gatello or Foreman, given some host name, and we create another host of that same name. Maybe we've reprovisioned a VM or something like that. And when we go to register it through Subscription Manager, that new client would automatically kind of be associated to the existing host profile in Foreman and Gatello. And this is something that we thought about and said, well, you know what? What if someone were kind of clever or made a mistake and accidentally created a host, not through the provisioning path of Foreman, but given the same host name? And what we found was that, well, you could actually unintentionally trigger the unregistration of hosts in Gatello, which obviously is not a good thing. So we've made it A little bit harder to do that, and that's what I want to show you. So on my terminal here, I've got two machines. On the top, I've got Catello-client and Catello-client-A. And I've ran subscription manager identity to show that this host is registered right now, Catello client, but Catello client A is not registered. However, if I go to my content host list, I see that I actually have a previous registration for a host called Catello client A. So in the old world, if I had, prior to Catello 3.12, attempted to register this host again, it would assume the profile of Catello client A. And that may or may not be desired, because maybe Catello client A is actually a real system that is still registered. But given the new changes, if I attempt to register, we should see some messaging around the fact that there is an existing host. And indeed, we get that message, please unregister or remove host, which match this host before registering. And it tells us the host is Catello client A. Now, let's say that we did actually want to reuse this host profile. That's actually not too hard, but we wanted to make it a deliberate choice. And so in order to make it deliberate, we actually have to come to the host and do the unregistration ourselves. So I can do that here. And if I go back to the host profile, we should see, excuse me, that the host is not currently registered. Great, so now I should be able to re-register this host and assume that old profile. So the key here is that we need to deliberately unregister a host from the subscription management aspect of Catello before we can re-register it. This is not something that I would say is the typical use case, but in general, I would advise that if you are creating new hosts, it's a best practice to do a subscription manager unregister. So that's one aspect of the changes in 3.12 content host registration I wanted to share. The second aspect is around the fact which lives on client systems called the DMI system UUID. Given the name UUID, we should ideally have unique values for this UUID across all of our hosts. And we've kind of added what I would call a soft limit around this UUID. If we attempt to register a system which has the same DMI system UUID as an existing system, we are similarly going to raise a registration error around that. And this is for two reasons. One, the UUID should be unique, but also we've had some changes in Candlepin around the tracking of this UUID in order to reduce kind of duplicate host profiles being created across registrations if we're re-registering systems, for example, having the same UUIDs. And so we're keeping our data in the backends a little cleaner by doing this. I won't go into the behavior of the registration given duplicate UIDs. It's exactly the same as I demoed for the host name having been registered with the same name or not unregistered first. But I will say that if for whatever reason in your environment you do legitimately have hosts with the same UUID for some reason, maybe you have an odd libvirt configuration, or maybe at the hardware level you've got the same UUID being used, you can override this UUID. If we create a small JSON file here, for example, uuid.fax, and I put this custom value here, so long as I place the file into my etc rhsm fax error, this is how it can be worked around. But ideally, we shouldn't be seeing this error because systems should be having a UUID. So it kind of points out a potential issue in the infrastructure. That is all I wanted to show. So Let me know if you have any questions around it. I'm Jay Terrell on IRT. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was very informative. So next on we have Ivan, who will talk about task notifications and troubleshooting links. Over to you, Ivan.
Okay. Hello. I hope you can hear me. I will share my screen now. The screen sharing is on. So I think that's. I hope it works. So if it doesn't work, please stop me and I will do my best to fix that, but I will assume it works now. So what I would like to show is two enhancements that we did recently in the tasking regarding having more visibility into cases when something goes wrong, namely when the tasks get paused. So I just log in again, and what I did is I would simulate some error during the content view publishing, so that I actually see some errors during that process, and you will see the new things that we've added to be able to get to some resolution of that. So when I go to the content views and create new content view, demo 2. Yeah, I think that's valid. For this case, I don't need any content in there because I just want to see an error. So we should get an error in a few seconds. That actually need to respect settings. Yeah, and I actually got the notifications so that I've seen it in here, and it says that the task publishing content view demo 2 for this organization got paused, and I can go to the task details for this particular notification, which actually will get me to the details of that particular task. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. And there is also additional troubleshooting notice that there was not before, and it contains the link to the external documentation regarding the troubleshooting. So right now, for this purpose, I've used the troubleshooting that information that comes in the catalog documentation, because this is right now the most extensive page upstream describing what can be done in terms of troubleshooting the tasks. But in the future, I would like to see a common place for the tasks for like more or all the plugins around there. And like it can be also customized from the code itself. I will not dig into details there, but it's possible to customize the URL of this link on per task basis. And there is another notification that got produced as well, which is there are 4 post tasks right now. And the difference between this one and this one is in the fact that this notification gets published for every task that is triggered by the user, and only the user that triggered that actually gets this notification, while this notification is getting every administrator that actually can do something about that task. So the reasoning for this is that we don't want to get a single notification for every host task or host related task that would be happening due to some error in the backend system. So for that cases, we don't want to spam the notification, but rather aggregating the numbers so that people just see that there are like 4 post tasks in this case and that need some attention. So if I go through this notification, I will not get to the details of of the particular task, but I will get the filtered list of the all post tasks right now, and I can do something around them. And again, like the following troubleshooting documentation might be one of them. So I could also show how it behaves when I'm doing this thing from the non-admin user, such as this one. So I have the some user without admin rights, and if I go to the content view, I need to create a new content view because the old one is already blocked by the post task. So demo 3. And publishing new version. So in this case, like, I would get the notification once it refreshes internally. I will help it a bit. Oh, I already got it here. So right now there is only one notification for the user because this is a non-admin user. So the original user gets notified about some problem with the particular task, while the administrator gets a notification about currently 5 post tasks in the system that need their attention. And I talked a bit about the troubleshooting documentation link already, and I just want to show that there is also the troubleshooting documentation link within the notification itself. The last thing probably to mention about the troubleshooting documentation is that we actually support ability to add the details about the particular task inside the URL. So within the settings where this troubleshooting URL is configured, it's in the Foreman tasks, we can actually use the label placeholder. So like if I in the URL actually had something like tasks, and then there would be something like this, the label would get part of the URL itself. It probably would not work for this case because the task is already the key or the anchor for the link. So this would require some additional change on the documentation to support this functionality as well, but we already have it in the tasks ready to be used. And that's probably it what I want to show today.
Great. Thank you for the demo. It was really very informative, and it will help a lot of people in troubleshooting. So thanks a lot, Ivan. I'm just going to re-remind you that there will be a Did You Know tweet series in the next week, starting from next week. So if you haven't yet, if you are not following Foreman on Twitter, please do so. And if you have any questions, ask us on Freenode. We are on Discourse. You can put your questions on Discourse. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next demo.